Up next on BGDX.
Jefferson Parish 911, operator 54.
Hurry up! Lure line. 11. Lure line. I don't know. There is a case. There is false.
What is the address on Lure Line?
I don't know. Whole block. 700 block and up. He went up.
Can one body, one soul, one person be declared deceased twice? And how does a crime scene technician know there's a crime before it has actually occurred? And how does a clock not know what time it is? These are just some of the questions that I have after spending the greater part of 2 months with hundreds of pages of documents. And that is no exaggeration. One of the reports was 89 pages long. And the report itself was 5 or 6 numerals long. And within those 5 or 6 numerals, there were multiple reports, multiple links to reports. And after spending all of this time with them, making phone calls, asking questions, I am no closer to understanding why this case was not taken to trial 2 months ago, to understanding why this was settled. But I have some questions, and I assure you these next 8 episodes are not some trauma porn for clicks and views. This is a public service announcement. This is an outcry. This is an appeal to anybody that will listen, because I don't think there's a statute of limitation for murder in the state of Louisiana. I don't think anybody should get away with murder, let alone 4 cops. The blood of Keeven Robinson is on the hands of so many people, so many. But we're going to start with Sheriff Lopinto, because he's attempting to become the face of police accountability in this country, and I cannot let that happen. Prior to the war in Ukraine becoming the 24/7 breaking news that it's become, there was a story that broke out of Louisiana, out of Jefferson Parish. And for those of you who are not as familiar with the swamp and bayou, like I am, a Louisiana native, Jefferson Parish, when you think of it, think of New Orleans, because it's part of the greater metropolitan area of New Orleans. If you've been to the Essence Festival and you've been to the convention center, you're very close, a stone's throw away from Jefferson Parish. So when you think of it, think of New Orleans. So this story broke, and I can tell you why it was huge. It was everywhere. CNN covered it, Fox covered it, CBS, NBC, ABC, the BBC, all of the C's covered it. Print media, digital media, it was everywhere because of the headline. When a headline reads, 2 police officers arrested, manslaughter of an unarmed motorist, the initial reaction is finally somebody's being arrested for killing someone who was unarmed. There was admiration and praise for Sheriff Lopinto for charging his officers, right? But I urge you to slow your roll. Just slow your roll. In fact, bring it to a screeching halt. He's not it, because when he had the opportunity to arrest 4 of his officers for killing Keeven Robinson, he didn't arrest them. In fact, some could say he covered it up. He is not the face of police accountability. And every single time he steps up to a mic, I'm going to remind everyone of Keeven Robinson. But let's start with the facts. I like to let the facts do the heavy lifting. There isn't too much that I need to do. The facts actually do the job if we just stick with the facts. The report itself was 27 pages long, 5 numerals. And within that report, there were several reports, links to other reports. One of the reports alone was 89 pages long. So I reviewed hundreds of documents about this case. More than anything, I want to show you, page by page, what I discovered in the documents. And you tell me what you think about it. I couldn't find anything in those documents that would lead me to settling this case, because the coroner said it was a homicide. It was obvious that it was a homicide. And a few weeks before it goes to trial, I think it was supposed to go to trial on January 12th, the case gets settled in December. The coroner said it was a homicide. It was obvious it was a homicide. His neck was broken. In addition to his neck being broken, his left vertebrae artery was severed. This is the artery that supplies all of the blood to your brain and to your spinal cord. So had he survived this attack, he wouldn't have had any quality of life anyway. He would have been paralyzed from the neck down. This is a 4-on-1 fight. We're talking about a 5'11", 145-pound Keeven Robinson. By all definitions, skinny, a 4-on-1 fight. And this sheriff tried to convince us that his officers were in the fight of their life. So we have 4 officers on one skinny Keeven Robinson. You know, I'm talking about, let's just say if each officer weighed an average 200 pounds. So we have 800 pounds of jambalaya, red beans, and boudin on one skinny Keeven Robinson. Let's listen to the 911 call.
911 operator 54.
Hurry up! Your line. Your line. 11. Your line. I don't know. There is a case. There is false.
What is the address on Loreline?
I don't know. Whole block. 700 block and up. He went up.
Okay, 700 block of Loreline?
Yes, your line.
Okay, and what's going on?
Oh my God! It happened on a Labar place, and he got off the car and ran to Lure Line. I don't know after that. I'm on Labar, but they ran to Lure Line Street.
Okay, ma'am, what happened?
The cars hit each other, and the man got out the car and started running. There is a bunch of cars in a corner on Labar place.
Okay, was it?
And they started running.
Okay, ma'am,
I don't know. I didn't see shooting.
Ma'am, I'm trying to understand you. Okay, what exactly happened? I heard that the men got out of the car and started running, but what happened?
The car crashed before. I don't know if they were chasing him and did that car crash, but he got out of the car after that car crash happened and started running. There is cars. I think I seen the man in the west. I don't know. I'm far from it, but
okay,
there is a bunch of cars.
Okay, do you know what kind of car it is?
I don't know. I'm not close, but there is a bunch of cars in there.
Okay, you couldn't see what color or anything?
Well, I will come closer. I'm a person and delivering mail, and it happened right when I delivering mail. Hold on, let me.
Okay, could you the mail? Could you see what he was wearing?
No. I think it was a black man. I think he was a black. Let me see.
Okay. And you said that car crashed in the 700 block of Loreline?
They are in the west. The guys are in the west. Hold on. Is it maybe there is a car? I don't know. Let me come closer to them.
You said he was wearing a vest?
No. The guys are here who is in the west. No, he wasn't wearing the vest. They were probably chasing him. Are you policeman? Jesus, I'm calling the police. Did you catch him? No, they're here already. They're chasing him. Did you? The sheriff got.
Okay, so it's a policeman?
Yeah, there's policemen here. They're looking for him. All right.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Go ahead and speak with them then.
Huh? What you say?
Okay, go ahead and speak with them since they're there.
Are you still looking for him? I'm on the call with the police. Are you still looking for him? The woman asking.
You got him.
You got him? Yes.
Hey, hello?
Hey, it's operator 54.
It's 668. We couldn't switch over. We're on Knock 3. I got a unit pulling up now.
Oh, okay. All right. No problem.
Yep. Well, I guess you can generate an item for this.
Okay.
Switch over in a minute.
Because she gave us 700 block of Laura line.
All right. 108 is, we're going to need EMS as well.
Okay.
I'm going to give you an address. Nobody's got freaking numbers out here. Use, yeah, you get it all, man. I can hear y'all on my radio. Battery was not letting me come over. So, good now. 11? 11 Labar?
Number 11 Labar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 11 Labar.
Is it going to be quarter place?
What's that?
Is it going to be Labar quarter place?
Yeah, like, what's the 95? Hey, man, is this Labar court or place? Place.
Place, okay. And what is EMS needed for?
Lacerations of face. All 26, okay.
All right. All right, I'll go ahead and I'll put it through.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Bye. Okay.
That was Natalia Phelan, a postal carrier, on May 10th, 2018. The situation she was describing was Keeven Robinson, who you see here on the screen. 22-year-old Keeven Robinson. So she's out, she's delivering her mail, and she sees him running, and she calls 911. And she's trying to, she's stressed, she's trying to describe what she's seeing. She's telling them Labar Place and Lurline, where she's located. And it's unclear to me if the police officer who you heard in the call wanted the call, asked for the phone, or if she gave it to him. But he made sure that he spoke to that 911 operator, and he made sure he said, let's go ahead and generate an item for this. And I'm paraphrasing, but let's generate an item for this. Okay? The 911 operator asked him, he said, we're also going to need it, EMS. And the 911 operator asked him, what do we need it for? And he said, a laceration to the face. The truth is, Keeven Robinson, I'm going to show you in just a few seconds here. Prior to that 911 call, a minute before that 911 call, Keeven Robinson was actually at a gas station. And a minute later, he's running. And I'm going to explain to you why he was running. And if it was me, I would have been running too. Okay? And there was more than a laceration to his face. Because you see, he sustained a broken neck. The rarest of all spinal cord injuries, a fracture to that C1 and C2, which is most oftentimes fatal. And if you do survive that, your quality of life, you basically don't have a quality of life, because most often you are paralyzed from the neck down. You're in a vegetative state. You can't eat. You can't do anything, any of your bodily functions. And I do mean any of them. He sustained that kind of injury within about 4 minutes of an encounter with the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's deputies. So when I tell you that Sheriff Joseph Lopinto is not the face of police accountability, it's not based on anything but facts. Mid-February, this sheriff charged 2 of his officers, 2 black officers, with killing an unarmed white motorist. This was investigated. The 2 officers were charged, and they were fired the next day, all within 1 week. 2 black officers, 1 white victim. Keeven Robinson was killed on May 10th, 2018. A black man killed by 4 white officers, Agent Spadoni, Agent Lowe, Agent Brister, and Agent Bordelon. They broke his neck, all within about 5 minutes. May 10th, 2018. This sheriff did not charge them with anything. In fact, the investigation, it took 3 years for the investigation to be completed. And it took 3 years, over 3 years, for the family to receive the settlement. The blood of Keeven Robinson is on the hands of so many people. It's been reported that his mother received about $8,500. There was a judge who oversaw that. $8,500. And when you think about it, when the attorneys slice it up because they need to get their fee, she may have been left with about $5,900, give or take a few bucks. But $8,500, that's about $1 a day for her son's life. That's insulting that you would even present that. Now, I know there's some conversation that's going to happen about whether or not she should have accepted it. And I'm not passing judgment on her, but I wouldn't have accepted it. You can't hand me a check for $8,500 when my son died from compressional asphyxia. That was his cause of death. And of course, he had a broken neck, left vertebrae artery was severed, all of this other stuff that happened. You can't hand me a check for $8,500 when you did that to my son. It's been reported that his wife received about $300,000 as well. And I understand there's a child that needs to be provided for. I understand, I get that part. But criminally, nobody has taken responsibility for what's happened to him. And this is the reason why these officers are running amok. And this Crane that oversaw this settlement, I'm wondering how many of those birds in her family are worth $1 a day. Because she looks like she, hails from a long, line of birds. She looks like she hails from a long line of birds. This judge wasn't the only judge that participated in this. In fact, there were several judges that signed off on warrant after warrant. A warrant was signed after he was deceased. Can you imagine that? A warrant was signed after he was deceased. One of the things you haven't heard me talk about much is why the police officers were pursuing him. We're going to get to that. But the reason why I delayed explaining why he was running and why they were chasing him is because it doesn't matter why they were chasing him. It doesn't matter what they were pursuing him about. He shouldn't have been killed. They used the reason why they were pursuing him as justification for why they killed him. The document is filled with why they were pursuing him as justification for why they killed him. This is the footage right before he was killed, just a few minutes. As you can see, there's a black SUV pulling into the Shell gas station. This is the vehicle that Keeven was driving. He's exiting that vehicle. He's walking slowly, remember this, slowly, into the Shell gas station. So he walks into that station. He's in there for maybe 30, 40 seconds, and he buys one item at the counter. There's another customer that is walking into that Shell gas station, into that door, and Keeven is going to walk out of that door. Keeven is going to exit the gas station slowly. You see that? He's walking around. That black car wasn't even fully in the parking lot yet. Keeven gets into his car, that black car that pulled up behind him, and there was another car that pulled up to the front of him. And Keeven, he closed the door quickly, but he wasn't running. He didn't run in and he didn't run out. In fact, he was almost in the car when the first vehicle pulled up behind him. He was almost in his car. Now he closed the door quickly because another car zoomed up on him. And so he closed the door quickly, but he didn't run. But in their document, it said that he was running, but that was not true. See, they started lying about things that didn't even matter. He didn't run. He walked into the gas station slowly. He walked in slowly and he walked out slowly. That car, he was almost in his car before that car even pulled up behind him closely. But they said that he ran. So they started lying about things from the jump. This is at, according to the gas station camera, 10:08. But you'll see, well, as you've previously heard, the 911 call was at 10:07. So there's a little bit of a difference from the gas station clock and the 911 call. And the moment that they are pursuing him, these two officers from the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office know that there is no need to even pursue him. They know where he's going. There's no need for a high-speed chase. There's no need for a foot chase. There's no need for any of this. This is all in the document. But needless to say, they pursue him, they chase him, and ultimately he is killed. This was so unnecessary. This was one of the most unnecessary tragedies I've seen in a long time. Because when he left this gas station, it wasn't difficult for the deputies to figure out where he was, to locate him. This is a known fact from the documents. So there was no reason for this tragedy to even happen. There was no reason for it. There's no justification for it. But when you demonize someone, that's your excuse for what you've done. That is the reason why there's so many unnecessary documents. This is the Jefferson Parish Crime Report section. The reporting officer is Joseph Wagaspack. So he arrives on the scene at 10:10 and 10 seconds. 11 minutes later at 10:21 and 35 seconds, he's already completed his report. He has all of the information in there. He even has Keeven Robinson, Keeven Robinson's name, the victim's name as the state of Louisiana. Look at that. State of Louisiana. That's how he put his name in there. And the crime scene technician arrived at the same time. The reporting officer arrived at 10:10 and 10 seconds, and the crime scene technician arrived at 10:10 and 20 seconds. So in fact, the crime scene technician was there a full minute before Keeven was even pronounced deceased, according to Jefferson Parish, because on their report, they have him pronounced deceased at 10:10 and 11 seconds. Now, the coroner pronounced him deceased at 11:15. But something is really strange about these numbers. It's, kind of odd how such a chaotic scene that involved so many people, that a reporting officer within 11 minutes is able to get back to his unit, get to his computer, and log 5 or 6 offenses, put in the information that he needs to put in, and be done with his report within 11 minutes. But when it came to the narrative that he needed to write for this report, it took him 28 days. So let's get into what this is really about and what they wrote up and what it is that they want us to think and what they want us to feel. Because as we proceed along in this case, in these episodes, you're going to see they keep beating us over the head with what they want us to think about him. Because if they can get you to feel a certain way about him, then you won't care that they broke his neck. You won't care that he was killed. This is why they tried so hard to convince anybody that will listen that Keeven Robinson was a drug kingpin. When I read these documents to you, you won't believe it, because they're trying really hard to convince everyone that he was this big time drug dealer. According to them, he was a drug trafficker on the scale of Ghost on Power or Franklin Saint on Snowfall. If you let them tell it, he was a big time drug trafficker. It's not true. In my opinion, it's not true. Much of what I read didn't make sense. So there was use of the word extensive a lot. An extensive investigation. Now, this investigation started in April. sometime in April. They're not exactly sure when. And by the end of April, we have search warrants. And early May, we have a death. So I want you law enforcement, officers to educate me on an extensive investigation, because I'm not a law enforcement officer or a detective or a private investigator, but I'm thinking if I was investigating a drug kingpin, I want to know who the plug is. I want to know who the plug's plug is. I want to know where the dope coming from, how much money we dealing with. I want to know who the corner boys are. This doesn't even make any sense. This is their definition of extensive. There was one CI that didn't know anything but knew everything. There's another CI that bought $100 worth of heroin from Keeven, allegedly, but there's no record of it. There's no proof of it. There's no pictures of Keeven handing her or him the dope. Nothing. Just their word for it. So if we're talking about an extensive investigation, it seems as though if he's this kingpin, wouldn't you want to flip him? Don't you want to know where the dope coming from? If we're talking about real investigative work, I want to know who the plug is. We're talking about an extensive investigation that lasted possibly a few weeks, maybe. One purchase. In order to save some time, I'm going to let the computer read the documents to us because I can increase the speed on it and we can get through things a little faster. When I started with this story, I thought it was going to be maybe 3 episodes at the most, and I stopped at episode 8. I feel like I could have probably gone on to, 10 episodes because I had more documents, but that was a good place to stop because this is something that I feel like I could go on and on and on about. But let's just listen to the summary in the opening documents of this 27 pages and pay close attention to what it is that they're trying to make you think and make you feel.
Page 4 of 27. As District Attorney, my oath requires that my office determine the facts from an objective and neutral perspective without regard for the parties involved. Once the facts are established, my office must determine which laws govern a specific set of facts and circumstances. Be summary. Beginning in the early part of April 2018, JPSO narcotics agents conducted an undercover investigation of Keeven Max Robinson, who was suspected of trafficking cocaine and heroin on the east bank of Jefferson Parish.
Y'all remember the reporting officer Joseph Wagaspack, right? He was the one that completed his entire report in 11 minutes. Okay? Well, all of this started with a confidential informant. What he did was on June 8th, almost a month later, he goes in and he adds a narrative at 4:57. It took almost a month to add a narrative to this, right? He goes in and he says that this started with, in the early part of April. Now, Keeven was killed in May. The early part of April, a confidential informant. So say know everything about Keeven Robinson, but didn't even know, because Keeven goes by Max, but she doesn't even know Keeven's real name. She doesn't even know Keeven's real age. So this all starts with this confidential informant that knows nothing, but knows everything. So the confidential informant, because we don't know if it's a man or a woman, but they are in Birdie's. They're in the gas station, right? Keeven comes in the gas station. They have an interaction with Keeven. Keeven so say had the dope down in his drawers. And I'm quoting, the confidential informant describes having a conversation with Keeven, and they saw that it was possibly 1 2-ounce bag of either heroin or cocaine. Now listen, for the people that know dope, okay, and I'm not making light of this, but this is ridiculous. This confidential informant, so say, didn't even know if it was cocaine or heroin. Now, come on, y'all. You know what the dope is. You know if it's heroin or cocaine. This is crazy. And Keeven is in the gas station, I guess. Excuse me. He trying to sell the dope in the gas station where there are cameras in there, but he's in there going down in his drawers, pulling out a bag of either heroin or cocaine, because we don't know what it is, trying to make a sale. This is crazy. If you the dope man, you do not have to go to Birdie's to sell anything. They're coming to you. You don't have to go to them. They're coming to you. Because if you're doing heroin, you're about to get dope sick. He doesn't have to look for anyone. They looking for him. And this confidential informant said that Keeven said that that's what he rolled with. That's what I'm rolling with. And to the police officers, to the investigators, they determined that meant that Keeven, was indicating that he dealt a significant amount of narcotics. Whatever it is that you could have placed in your drawers, that's supposed to be a significant amount of narcotics. They would lead you to believe that Keeven Robinson was this drug kingpin based on whatever dope that the CI said, but she didn't know what it was, or he didn't know what it was, that was in his drawers, that he was this big kingpin, that he's Ghost off of Power, or that he's Franklin Saint off of Snowfall. So fast forward to the week of April 30th. We have a new CI. We have a new confidential informant. And allegedly, this person purchased some drugs from Keeven Robinson, right? But there's no pictures of it. There's no video of it. There's nothing of it. There's no proof of it. We have to rely on the word of the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office. There's no proof of anything. But this CI, so say, bought heroin from Keeven Robinson. So based on that, Agent Spadoni drafts a lawful order for searches for Robinson's residence, okay? So he uses a warrant now database. He submits copies of this stuff to the 24th Judicial Criminal Court Commissioner, Paul Snyder. And on May 2nd at 3:47, it's signed, it's endorsed, right? Agent Spadoni also drafted another lawful order for cell phone GPS tracking on Keeven. So from 2 p.m. on May 7th, 2018 until 6 p.m. on May 11th, 2018, they knew exactly where he was, where he would be, where he was going, because they had GPS tracking on him. Criminal Commissioner Patricia Joyce signed that on May 7th at 12:03 p.m. Now, Keeven was killed on May 10th. So when they are pursuing him, they're chasing him. When he left the gas station, there was tracking on him. There was no place he could have gone, and they couldn't have gotten to him or known where he was. From the beginning, this smelled like a cover-up to me. Remember the 911 call? Natalia Phelan, she was a postal carrier that came up on the scene and saw Keeven running. She calls 911. There was a police officer, Whittington, who either he got the phone or she gave it to him, but he spoke to the 911 operator, right? And he said, let's go ahead and generate an item for this. I think it was 14108 that may have been resisting arrest, right? And he said, we're going to need EMS. And the operator says, what do we need it for? And he said, a laceration to the face. Well, the documents reveal that Whittington was the first person to discover that Keeven wasn't breathing. But when he was on the phone with the 911 operator, he said, we need it for a laceration to the face. Why didn't he tell her we need it for a laceration to the face? But most importantly, we need it because he is not breathing. Because in the documents, it says that this detective tried to get Keeven to state his address. Now, they have such an extensive investigation of Keeven, but they are unsure about where he lives. So he's saying, hey, buddy, what's your address? Keeven isn't responding, right? So he turns them over. Well, Keeven still isn't responding. So according to him, he did a sternum rub to try to, rouse some consciousness in Keeven. Keeven still isn't responding. Well, according to them, at this point is when they start with CPR. But on the 911 call, he said, we need it for a laceration to the face. He never said on that 911 call that Keeven wasn't breathing. Why? Why was that not the most important information you gave to the 911 operator, but you wanted to make sure that she got the 14108, the resisting arrest, but you didn't convey the fact that he wasn't breathing to the 911 operator so we can expedite EMS a little quicker? There was supposed to be a transcript of the interview from this Detective Whittington on page 90 in one of the reports. I looked for it 2 or 3 times. I couldn't find it. Now, I did review hundreds of pages of documents, and I could have overlooked it, but I looked for it a couple of times, and I did not find it. What's interesting about that is that there's only one other time that I saw in all of these documents that the person that actually discovered he wasn't breathing, the person that was on the first 911 call, and the person that, in my opinion, shouldn't have even been on the scene. There's only one other time that that person's name is even mentioned in all of these documents, right? This person has a dual commission for New Orleans as well as Jefferson Parish. And what's interesting about that, there was a search warrant that was executed after Keeven Robinson passed away that day. And he was the one that was trying to verify his address. But see, when they turned Keeven over, he wasn't breathing. He didn't have a gun. He had an inhaler. And the reason why they couldn't move his hands is because, well, he had had an asthma attack. And number 2, he was deceased. And number 3, he was paralyzed. Stay tuned for episode 2 of the Keeven Robinson story. And don't forget to give me a like on the way out. Thank you and good night.